All right, welcome to Tips from the Trenches. Educators share lessons learned from spring closures. I wanted to introduce our panelists. I'm just going to give you their names and let them introduce themselves and tell you their titles and a little bit about what they do. So I'm Christine Jones. I'm Associate Director of Global Literacy at Benetech. And in that capacity, I oversee support and outreach around Bookshare, and we're looking forward to another exciting school year. Melanie, do you want to say hi and talk a little bit about what you do?
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Christine. So I am an LEA facilitator for Polk County Schools. I am school-based, working with a population of about 800 students at my school, approximately 160 students with IEPs. So I oversee kind of the services and accommodations for those students with IEPs and EPs here on campus. And then, of course, coordinate with other people within the district as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie. And let's go over to Scott Richards. Can you say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Richards. I work as an occupational therapist for the Boston Public Schools. And my main role is that I work on the assistive technology team. And traditionally, I travel around the school district and do evaluations with students and meet with teachers to do evaluations on students to find out if they have any needs for assistive technology. Since we've gone remote, things have changed. I've done a lot more virtual training with mainly with staff, but sometimes individually with students and families as well. I'm glad you're all here to join us today.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And Amy Ratajczak, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Amy. I'm a speech-language pathologist and assistive technology professional in a small suburban school district outside of Buffalo, New York. My main job is to provide speech-language services for students in self-contained life skills programs across our district. Most of my students have very limited language or use communication devices. The other part of my job is I am the part-time assistive technology evaluator, and I consult with all of our special ed staff and regular ed staff and our students who need technology to access their curriculum.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm going to stop sharing the slides so that we can all just be on the screen. And all right. So thank you all for joining, and it's great to be together on this as we get ready for a new school year. So I thought I would start out by just asking each of you to describe the current state of learning in your districts. What's happening? What model are you going with in terms of how are students learning and how are teachers teaching? So go ahead, Melanie.
Okay, so I'm in Polk County, Florida, and we are currently providing parents 3 options. So they have the option of face-to-face learning in a brick and mortar school, or e-learning through the school campus. So our school teachers will be providing e-learning opportunities for the students at their schools. Or a third commitment or a third option is the virtual school for the whole Polk County or state. So we started school for students last week. This is week number 2 for us. And we currently, what we started with was right about 45% in school settings, about 45% at home, and another 9% that committed to that Polk virtual, so a whole countywide virtual or statewide virtual program. So that's where we stand right now, about half of our students in school.
Thank you. All right. Scott.
So we have not officially began our school year yet. The official start date for our teachers and staff is on September 8th. And we have a period of between September 8th and the 21st to prepare for the school year. And that's going to involve a lot of outreach to the families and students and collaboration between departments, preparing the schools, the PPE and social distancing, lots of things to work out between, and a lot of professional development between now and and the time that school begins, which is on September 21st. And it will commence with virtual learning, and they will we'll start with the early education and elementary school grades, and then middle school, and finally high school over the course of 2 to 3 weeks. And all of that is dependent on what happens between now and then. Things are constantly in flux, as you know.
Great, thank you. That's Scott from Boston Public Schools in Massachusetts. Thank you for that. Amy, tell us a little bit about what's happening in your district.
Well, our district has decided to give parents the option of fully distance learning or a hybrid model, which would mean that we only have 50% capacity in our schools at one time. So K through 5 students will be doing half days, either morning or afternoon. 6 through 12 will be doing a 2-day model where they come either Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday in school, and then participate in distance learning the other days of the week. Our self-contained students and our ENL students or ELL students will be coming to school 4 days a week, again having Wednesday off so we can deep clean and provide distance learning at those times. So the parents have the option of sending their child to school part-time, or they can keep them home and we will hook them up with distance learning. The students are not to come back until after Labor Day. The first week will be just half days for everyone, and it will be rolling out our new policies and procedures. There will be no instruction at this time. It's really just talking about the rules, regulations, PPE. Teachers have to go back tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to seeing my coworkers again in person.
Nice, nice. Well, that's really interesting. All three of you have slightly different, somewhat different scenarios, and that's, I think, very typical of what's happening across the country. Every district is looking at the data and talking with parents and trying to make the best decisions that they can for their respective area. And of course, there's quite a lot of variations on a theme in terms of the way things are being done. So that's really interesting. Thank you. So let me ask first, what preparation did your district do over the summer for fall? Or maybe you can highlight maybe a couple of things if any of you can think of some specific things that you thought were useful.
I can jump right in here because my district has been doing an incredible amount of preparation to bring the kids back. Administration and buildings and grounds have been working overtime to create safe scheduling, which we're actually putting students into cohorts, especially in the secondary level where they're only moving around with the same group of kids. They're not intermingling. So the scheduling alone took an incredible amount of work, as well as ordering all of the, we have now no more tables in any room. We have desks in every room now. We have plexiglass, not plexiglass, but CDC approved dividers around all of the table or around all of the student desks. They had to spend an incredible amount of money on masks, gloves, sanitizing equipment. For the therapists who have to work in close proximity to students, they had to go above and beyond and invest in clear masks, face shields, gowns, and extra gloves. So just the preparation of the reorganization of schedule and the buildings and grounds having to move equipment and put things in storage so we had more room it was an incredible amount of work that they were able to pull off.
It sounds like a Herculean effort. How about the other two of you?
I would just say a lot of the same thing. We had people working throughout our county just constantly doing a lot of the same things, although we are not limiting capacity to the school. And I will say that so this is really day 6 of students being returned to campus. And, I've already said, like, I'm at one school and we're getting calls. I want to say last week it was probably 20 plus calls a day of students from parents who wanted their students to return to campus learning. And the district did ask for parents to make a commitment of at least the first grading period to allow for working out of kinks and stuff, but they're still honoring parent requests. So even though they asked for that commitment, if parents have really already changed their mind and determined that e-learning wasn't going to be successful there for their students, they are allowing them to come back onto campus. So we do have, even though the original plan was probably about 45% on campus and 45% e-learning, it probably has skewed, a few degrees here and there. I certainly know at our school, we've probably welcomed back an additional 50 that were not expected, at least.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. Scott, how about for you?
So I know that it has been a monumental effort in our district to try to meet the needs of so many different parties, but primarily for the students. And there's so many different moving parts to this, including transportation. And then in light of social distancing requirements, there's all kinds of setup that has to be done in the school buildings with the buses and also coming up with the numbers of how many students will be in person versus those that will be remote. So as I mentioned in my comment here, we will also have a hybrid model. And so there'll be two different groups of students, and one group A, will go 2 days a week in person, and group B at that same time will be learning virtually. And then they swap on Thursday and Friday, and Wednesday is remote learning for everyone. And that's the way it's going to start. But there are also some flexibility within that where students who have higher needs, who have IEPs or English learners, there will be an option for parents to allow their student to come in for in-class or for in-person education. But that also depends on like seat availability. We don't want to, I think the idea is to not exceed capacity in certain regards. So it's an evolving process, but as of now, that's kind of the official word. And I know that the community organizations, the school district, including the administrators, teachers, nurses have chimed in, and then for transportation as well. I know it's been a multi-pronged approach, and there's a lot of work still to be done, and continually as we evolve through this process.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Scott. So let's talk about each of you personally, not your districts, but for you personally, how are you taking what you learned in the spring and applying it? Melanie, want to start us off?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's been some real positives in that when our schools closed back in March, it definitely affected a large part of what I do as the coordinator of ESE services. So I'm a part of all the IEP meetings for all of our students at my school. So that really put us in a situation where for a couple of weeks they had to decide, okay, what are we going to do about this? And so for a couple of weeks we sat kind of idle. But then by the end of March, early April, we were given access to a program that we had never utilized before. And it was a platform similar to like a Zoom, except it was called GoToConnect. I don't know if other people are familiar with that. So GoToConnect is something then we started utilizing for IEP meetings. And I would say it was extremely successful. I believe that in a 60-something day period, I think we had about 85, 90 IEP meetings through that platform. And, there were little glitches here and there, but overall it was extremely successful. We had a great participation rate with parents. So, not knowing what this school year would look like, they have said that we're not to have visitors on campus for the most part. So they're asking that our IEP meetings this year be held virtually. unless a parent feels very strongly that they want to meet in person, then we're making that accommodation for them. But generally speaking, we're having our meetings virtually again this year. And it's a platform that I still say has been very successful. I had 3 meetings today and about 5 last week. So I think that's one of the real big pluses, is that parents can't always get away to attend meetings, that it's very important that they attend. And this is just one more way for them to participate. And I appreciate it. So that's one of the big things that I just feel pretty strongly about, that's positive, that's come out of it.
That's great. And I suspect that that's a theme where we may hear again and again, not just today, but in the coming weeks, is, the realities that everyone was grappling with forced everyone to get innovative and creative. And there are going to be some things that come out of that we're going to really like, that we're going to decide we want to keep and keep doing. So I think that might be one of many examples. So
definitely. Great. I mean, I think it's real easy. I should say it's a lot easier for a parent to commit to a 30, 45 minute quick video or phone conference and be a part of a meeting than it is for them to take off work and be at the school. That just feels a lot more formal for people that are uncomfortable in that situation. I think it's been great with our participation. I mean, I've had parents participate in these virtual meetings that didn't come to face-to-face meetings before. And really, even the parents that don't have access to technology, they're jumping on the phone and they're being a part of this. So I think it's great.
Great. Awesome. Scott, how about for you?
I think initially the students, the staff, and the families were quickly overwhelmed as we unexpectedly closed our schools and switched to remote learning. And there wasn't any recipe or formula for how to deal with it, and nor was there anything finite about when it was going to end. So I think initially it was taken as a temporary solution that we had to do the remote learning. So BPS did a great job of scrambling and getting out technology to our students who needed it. There was a plan to roll out Chromebooks on a one-to-one basis for a certain population of our students, and that was advanced to much sooner so that students got access to the Chromebooks faster. So we had a bunch of sites where these Chromebooks were being deployed, and a lot of support was given through the city and the school district to help families get set up with reliable Wi-Fi access who didn't have it. I realized that it hasn't been perfect, but I know that a lot of students were able to access their technology or access their learning through the technology that was provided to them quite quickly. Me personally, my work as a related service provider, I found that it became very critical to streamline communications through the teacher, because that's the frontline, basically our frontline workers with the students. And if we as related service providers added an extra burden onto the parents who are already extremely overwhelmed at home, they're not used to being in charge of their students' education throughout the day. So, and many are working either remotely or they're essential workers who went in to their jobs. So it left a gap for many students, and I think streamlining our communication was a very critical thing to do in order to not overwhelm parents and to still keep them involved and engaged. And the same goes for the students. Me personally, I work on the assistive technology team, and that often involves in-person communication and in-person training, but we switched to all remote because of the situation. And I found that the relationships I had with my colleagues and with students and families really evolved. It turned into completely virtual training, webinars, support with technology, and I found that people from different departments were reaching out to me, and I was reaching out to people in different departments that I normally would not have communication with. So I found that to be a real unique opportunity to branch out, and sometimes it felt like there was too much to do. Not that I didn't know what to do. It was just there was too much to do. So I've done as much as I can, and I know that everyone's doing as much as they can. And I do think there's some opportunity as well as some challenges within that.
Great, thank you. Amy?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Melanie said. Our IEP annual review season hit us in March and April. So our IEP meetings, of course, went all virtual, and the attendance was phenomenal. But not only that, but when you get together together in person, and there's a lot of anecdotal talking and conversation, and then all of a sudden, your 25-minute meeting is a 45, 55, 65-minute meeting. So it really kept everybody on the clock because there was no extraneous conversation. So I really appreciated that. That was a positive. The other thing is I've been doing teletherapy since the end of March. And I, as a related service provider who travels between buildings, I haven't, I know the parents, I communicate with the parents, but it's usually a quick email or a text or a quick phone call. And having my parents actually participate in all of my therapy sessions was such a wonderful gift. I developed some wonderful friendships as a result, and they got to see what I do. And I think that was really positive for the teachers too, because it's very easy for a parent to judge what's happening because they don't know what's going on in the building. But when you're seeing your student interact with the other students in the classroom, and you're seeing what they're good at and their weaknesses, and what the other kids are doing, it's a really positive experience, and it helps them understand the why of what I do with some of my students. Why I'm focusing on the social language versus the speech and articulation for certain kiddos. So I thought that was a really positive thing that came out of the teletherapy for me.
That's great. So I'm hearing a couple of really interesting themes that I want to pick up on a little bit. One is the increased collaboration between you all and families, right? That those, I think the word that Scott used was that those relationships evolved over time. And I'd love to hear just any more thoughts you have about that. And then the second one is more collaboration among your staffs in maybe different ways than you had collaborated before. So do any of you have additional things to share on either of those topics?
Sure. I feel like my relationship with the staff evolved in the way I think I kind of explained before, that I was able to reach out and build and develop relationships with other departments, and between myself, our department, and the central office, to be able to meet the needs of our students in ways that we hadn't met them before. And my relationship with students and parents actually became more personal, especially with the parents, because I often don't have in-person contact with parents unless they come to an IEP meeting or a phone call. But because of the sort of transient nature of the work that I do, I don't have frequent contact with families. And this working remotely has given me the opportunity to talk with parents more. And I feel like it's really powerful to have a strong rapport with the students and families, because if they feel that you understand where they are right now, it lends them to participate more. It lends them to feel like they're more involved and invested in their child's learning. So in a lot of ways, I think it's improved the relationship between our department or not our department, but our schools and related service providers and the families and students. It's helped to improve their engagement.
Great. Amy or Melanie, anything else to add?
So I would just add, I would say that probably the biggest struggle or challenge with what happened in the fourth quarter of last year would have been for our inclusion students. So the vast majority of our students with IEPs, typically when they're on campus, they have, a general education teacher and then an ESE teacher coming into the classroom. And it's easy for both of those teachers to see where the students are having difficulties and what help students need. In a distance learning situation like we were in March, April, and May, it was very difficult. It was difficult for every teacher to see what areas the students needed help in, you know, how they were struggling. And a lot of times it was up to the parents to be the ones to communicate when somebody was, you know, overwhelmed. And a lot of times by the time they got to that point, it was too much. So we had, you know, the parents that were saying, you had every end of the spectrum of the parents saying, oh my gosh, this is too much. I can't do it. I'm overwhelmed. It's too much. And then you had the other parents that were saying, you know, well, this is not enough. I need more. I need to keep my children busy, you know, and it was hard. So you had, you know, every regular education student had at least one teacher. Some of them, you know, in reality, so our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, for example, and this is just at the elementary level, so middle and high school students had 7 teachers each that were using, you know, different platforms. And so you think about for a middle school student, for example, with 7 classes, and if the inclusion teacher was an additional teacher that helped support 2 or more of those classes, they may even have 2 inclusion teachers. So that was overwhelming for parents to have to communicate with, you know, 7 or 8 or 9 teachers sometimes. And that was hard. So I think that the ESE teachers that provided support within the regular education classroom didn't feel like they were as beneficial to students as they would be in person, you know, and I know that every teacher felt that way. Every teacher felt like they, you know, they are more, they have a more meaningful effect on students when they're meeting in person. But I think it definitely hit that inclusion population pretty hard because it just was such this gamut of support needed and the communication. So I would say that was definitely a challenge.
And I would echo that sentiment. My students are, you know, multiply disabled, and I had quite a few students who really could not participate in the distance learning at all. They either didn't have the attention span or weren't recognizing that there was a human on the other side of the screen, or just had behaviors that didn't allow them to focus and do work on a computer. So that was a challenge, and I still have some students that are going to be quote unquote signed up for distance learning, but seeing that they didn't participate since March, I can't imagine we're going to be seeing them much in the fall. And I do worry about those students. They will definitely regress.
Excellent points. One of the questions that came to mind as you guys were talking is just how to equip parents for this increased role that they're playing if their students are learning at home. Are there any steps that your districts are taking to bolster the role that parents are playing at home in terms of learning?
Well, I can speak to what my district is doing. Because there were so many different platforms being used, we have all been told to consolidate. And whether we were using Classroom or Schoology or any other learning management system, we've been told all communication to parents and students about academics, about classwork, about due dates, and about assignments is going to go through one learning management system, Schoology. And we rolled this out a couple of years ago. Our middle school staff are all 100% on board, and they've been using it like a bunch of champs. But the elementary and the high school level teachers have been, some have jumped right on, and some are going to have to be trained. So all this summer, they've been offering Schoology courses, not just for the teachers, but for the paraprofessionals and also for parents. So they really have a good understanding of how this learning management system works, how they're going to keep their kids organized, how they're going to help their students, their children, recognize when things are coming up and when things are going to be due, and what the directions are. So I think that was one thing that came out of this that was very good. It's been a long time in coming.
That's funny, Amy. We have the same situation here in Polk County. So even though there was a a lot of different platforms used last school year. This school year, we're starting all on the same platform using Schoology as well.
Interesting.
We are not using Schoology. We've been a Google district for quite a while, and we're continuing to use our Google platform as our main platform for assignments and communications. And I know that, in the background, one of the most challenging aspects to the students returning or not returning to school is childcare. If parents have to go to work, what's going to happen with the kids who are at home learning? And I don't think that there's any easy answer for that, but I do know there's been a lot of participation with the school district and the community in ways to find childcare for families who need it. And then for students who are more marginalized, their populations are more marginalized, there are more opportunities for them to come in for in-school learning. Not every student can do that. Some students they're immunocompromised and their families just don't want to take any risks sending them into school. So they unfortunately will have to do remote learning. And I think the more that we can make sure that at the very least, the fundamental things about having reliable access to Wi-Fi and Chromebooks with cameras and microphones, that's critical for students to participate. And we'll be seeing as time goes on that there are more individual needs that need to be met. And as of now, we don't have answers to all of those questions because we haven't started up yet. I'm not even 100% sure how my role is going to look as the school year starts, but I'm ready for whatever comes because that's all we can do.
Great. Well, thank you. All of you are veterans now at this process and have graduated from the School of Hard Knocks in the spring and are really doing a great job implementing a lot of those lessons along with your colleagues this fall. We're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about technology. We're actually getting some questions about Bookshare specifically. So I'm going to jump in quickly and talk a little bit about Bookshare and how it can help students succeed, and then I'd love to hear all of your perspectives too on how you think Bookshare can help students learning in this environment and any tips you have in terms of how to implement it. But first I'm going to just quickly show a short video about Bookshare for anyone who's not familiar. Let me bring that up.
Inside every book is a new world, and nothing should keep you from exploring. Whether you're learning to read, studying for an exam, or just having fun, Bookshare helps you read in ways that work for you. Choose your favorite high-quality voice and listen to your books. Stay focused with karaoke-style text highlights. Adjust text to your perfect size, speed, color, and contrast. Choose from our huge collection of titles, ready to read on nearly any device. And the best part? It's free for U.S. students who qualify, and less than $1 a week for qualified adults. So start reading in ways that work for you and explore new worlds with Bookshare.
All right, so that's just a very quick overview of Bookshare. It's an ebook library for people who read differently because of one of any number of different conditions that limit their ability to read or process printed text. And actually, it turns out that Amy, Scott, and Melanie are all big Bookshare champions, so we'll get them to talk about it in a minute. But just wanted to ask or talk just briefly about kind of some of the nuts and bolts of Bookshare. So it's, as I mentioned, an ebook library. It contains over 900,000 titles. They can be accessed and read on nearly any device with any number of different apps or software, and the students can really customize their experience. As the video said, they can select the font they like, the voice they like, the size, the color scheme, and so many other features to make the experience really work for them. And obviously in this environment, we've had a huge surge in interest in Bookshare, which has been very gratifying. And it's been exciting to see a lot of districts realize that Bookshare can be a great resource for them. So can you each talk a little bit about your experiences with Bookshare and how you see it factoring into the school year, this coming school year? Melanie, can you start?
Sure. So we have a lot of our students with disabilities utilizing Bookshare, both on campus and then in the spring when those students were home, we created a letter and made sure that every student, that utilized Bookshare at home, or even if they hadn't but they were eligible, had that information and was able to join in on Bookshare at home. And I think a lot of our students did. One of the other things that our district did is that accelerated reader has been something that we've been using in our district for a long time, but it was not something that students had access to outside of the school building. And that did change because it is a motivating factor for students to read. And we felt like, we needed to continue to motivate children to read. So our district did make that available for students at home in the spring last school year. And so I think we had a lot of students utilizing Bookshare. A lot of the students used it at school, but not necessarily outside of school. And this gave parents the information they needed to make sure that students could still use it at home.
What else, Scott? What can you say about how Bookshare is going to be useful to your school this year?
What I found quite quickly is that there were a lot of teachers and administrators looking for solutions for how to provide reading materials to their students. Because Bookshare operates under copyright law, Bookshare is not allowed to just distribute it freely to all students, but there's a significant portion of students who do have access to, or do have a legal access to Bookshare, and providing, especially for self-contained classrooms or for a special education teacher that has a population of students that they work with in the same grade level, to be able to provide the books to those students in virtually, so that they can basically, it simulates being in person with the teacher who has the book, because they have a copy of their own book in front of them. The teacher can read aloud as they follow along, or if they have another device, the Chromebook can be used with Bookshare Web Reader. We have a license for Read and Write for Google, so often that's what I recommend, and I provide demonstrations for families and staff and administrators so that they can feel empowered to pass that along. That provides a slightly better reading experience, as Amy had mentioned in her comment there. And then if you have a portable device like an iPad or a tablet or a phone, that's probably the easiest and best way to read for a lot of students, because the app itself has a way to sign in through Bookshare. It shows your library, it has the images of all the books that are in the library, and so I think that's a great way for students to access their books at home, is through a portable device, and one of a couple different applications. Dolphin Easy Reader is a good one, and Voice Dream Reader. Those are the two most commonly used ones in our district. And what I found with teachers is that they were often eager to use Bookshare and to provide the books to their students, but they didn't feel like they knew how or had the time to do that. So I tended to sort of take on a heavier load in the beginning in providing that support for the teachers, like setting up students on a roster, assigning books to them, and then I would show through screen sharing to the teacher how I did that, and then have them do it alongside me so that they felt like they could then pass it along. And administrators are in a role where they have even less time to do that kind of thing. So I've been asked by some administrators to help facilitate that. And so instead of just expecting with some instructions that everyone is going to go in and follow whatever list of instructions or the instructions provided on Bookshare's website, I like to sort of front load it by helping with that to make sure that the students really get access to what they need as quickly as possible. So I feel like that's been, it's been a great opportunity to reach out with Bookshare in ways that I haven't been able to in the past, because it's more needed now.
Absolutely. Just quickly, I want to comment on something you said, which is about mobile phones and tablets. And we did a webinar last Thursday, the recording for which I believe should be available shortly, and it was through EdWeb, and it was about reading and how to keep kids reading, you know, during times of uncertainty and interruptions in school. And one of the interesting points that we found was the importance of mobile phones and tablets and how they really level the playing field for families. They are such an important way for families to be able to access content, even if they don't have internet access at home. They more than likely have a smartphone with a data plan, and much of the content, we did have a question in the Q&A about accessing content offline, and much of the content can be read offline depending on the tool or app that you have. There does need to be some internet access to be able to download books initially, but as Scott mentioned, two apps that are very popular among Bookshare readers, Voice Dream Reader and Dolphin Easy Reader. Dolphin Easy Reader is free. Voice Dream Reader has a small fee associated with it. Those both work on both the Android devices and iOS devices, iPhones and iPads. And the books can be downloaded within those apps when there is an internet connection and then read offline. Another educator I know at another large district told me about when you're using a Chromebook in offline mode and you've got the Bookshare web reader up, you have to have the web reader up and get the book up when you're in when you have an internet access, but the Snap and Read extension, I've been told, works when the Chromebook is in offline mode. So that's another great option for reading offline. And all Bookshare books can be downloaded as Microsoft Word documents, and those can be read, obviously, in an offline environment. So lots of options for offline reading. But definitely the importance of the mobile phone and the tablet has just increased tenfold, and we know that a lot of students are learning that way, oftentimes maybe with their parents' devices. So we are excited that Bookshare offers solutions for all of those environments. Amy, did you want to share a little bit?
Yes, I will say that when we went out for distance learning in the beginning, obviously the expectation of independent reading was greatly reduced. And what would happen is the general education ELA teachers or the reading teachers would actually read to the students through the learning management system. So everybody got their books read. It wasn't just, you know, the special ed students versus the gen ed. They all had the ability to either read the book or read the book with the teacher through, you know, audio recording. What I saw happening is my students who currently use Bookshare would be emailing me or having mom email me saying, could you add more books, because I'm really interested in reading the rest of the series that they started. So I saw my students actually start using Bookshare for fun reading this summer, and that was really super exciting. So I had to throw some books at some of my students this past week, because they're going through the Rick Riordan series, the Percy Jackson, which is always a big hit with the middle school boys. Going into the fall, I'm going to probably work with some of our teachers who are doing solely remote learning. So our elementary students are only doing half a day. The other half of their day, they will still have to be doing distance learning. And we have probably about 7 or 8 teachers who have voluntarily, and because of health reasons, taking kind of a leave where they're working from home and doing grade level teaching or distance learning for one grade level. So I just had an email from a teacher who's going to be doing all the online content for 5th grade for her building, and she needed to know more about Bookshare because she does have special ed students in her classroom. So I'm going to be doing some more individualized training with the gen ed staff who are going to be doing solely remote learning. So that's pretty exciting.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so a couple of questions that have come in I want to go ahead and address about Bookshare, and then we'll open it up for some more questions. So one of the questions was about the voices, or one of the comments actually about the voices, and we do hear that quite often, and what we would say is to keep trying different platforms, different tools to find the very best voices, and each student will find one that they like, and it's oftentimes very subjective and individual. But as many people know, the Bookshare web reader is a tool that reads Bookshare books in a browser that's available to all members. And that tool has its own text-to-speech engine. And if a student is not crazy about that voice, we definitely recommend the Read and Write extension or the Snap and Read extension. But particularly the Read and Write extension has a wide variety of voices that can be added. And so we recommend using that tool on top of Bookshare web reader to be able to get the very best voice there. But some of the really best voices are in the apps that we talked about, Voice Stream Reader and Dolphin Easy Reader, and then the immersive reader in Word online, or the Word, Microsoft Word on the desktop, if that version of the Word on the desktop has the immersive reader. That is a wonderful tool too, and the voice is very human sounding. So we definitely encourage you to check that out. And I'm going to share just a couple of things on the Bookshare site to give you guys some where you can find some important resources. So this is the Bookshare website, and if you go to the Help Center, and then you go to Learning Center, there's a couple of different things. There's a Educators Get Started guide here. There's a link here on the left. I definitely encourage you, if you're new to Bookshare, to use that to get started. It shows you how to create an account, how to add students, how to assign books, and then how students can log in and read. And then we have a whole series of webinars, today being one of those that you'll find here under Bookshare webinars. A very important Learning at Home resources page here, so please check that out. And then here under the how-to ... videos and guides, there's a wide range of guides and videos to show pretty much how to do every Bookshare task. There are videos on how to read Bookshare books on nearly any device with different apps and software tools. There are videos and guides in terms of how to add students, how to add other teachers, how to manage your account, how to know how much students are actually accessing books. So all of that information is here in the how-to section of the website. So I encourage you to check those things out. Also if you go, this is the Bookshare website, and I was saying that the student can access books that have been shared with them by their teacher, a student on a school account. And you can see here in my fake student account, they log in and they see their assigned books and their reading lists, any lists of books that have been shared with them, as well as any assigned books that have been assigned to them. And this student is a pretend student on my school account who has a fall textbooks list assigned to them here in the Browse link at the very top of the page. And then under For Kids, so the purple button for Kids, and then under Popular Series, this is where you can find all these series, and Bookshare has compiled them for you, so you don't even have to go into the collection and find them all yourself. So the whole Horrible Harry series, and Junie B. Jones, and Henry and Mudge, and Flat Stanley, and Magic Treehouse, and so many wonderful, wonderful collections of books. And Amy mentioned about the student who was interested in reading the whole series, and we do think that that's a great way to make sure kids are engaged in reading, is that help them find an author or a series that they really like, and then give them access to the whole thing. So the Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Kane Chronicles, all of these different series, a series of unfortunate events. So lots of wonderful books to choose from. These can all be brought into your account and then shared with students. We have training information both on the Help Center page that I mentioned, the Training and Resources page, and in the Educators Get Started guide can walk you through how to use these different lists, how to share those with students. But when a student is ready to search for their own books and they've got kind of the basic hang of it with Bookshare, we definitely recommend getting them a full individual membership. And the way that they can do that is they can select this green button when they're logged in to their account. They can select this green button here that says Read More for Free, and then click the sign up link. If they're under 18, there will be a place where the parent has to enter their information, and also on the second screen, the parent has to check a box indicating that they are giving approval for their minor age child to be able to access Bookshare at home. But then the student can log in and find any books, and the teacher can share books with them too. So teachers can really take advantage of both ways of students getting books. They can push books to students, and students can actually find their own books as well. So we definitely recommend that approach. Let's see. Okay, a free app that works with Chromebooks with Bookshare. So the Bookshare web reader, of course, opens up in Chrome and also in Safari and in the new Edge browser, and those devices have text-to-speech capability, or those programs have capability, but you can also use the Read and Write extension, and it is free. There's a free trial, and then even after the free trial goes away, the features that you need to read the book remain for free. So definitely that's a good one to check out. That was a question that came in.
I saw a question about remote assessments, and that's very interesting because I spent a good hour collaborating with coworkers today trying to figure out, we have our reading assessment window opening right now, and because we do have students who are e-learning and students who are on campus, it's not necessarily a problem for students that are at home learning to access assessments and take those assessments on their devices. The difficult part is the teachers who provide the accommodations, such as oral presentation. That's going to be difficult because, you know, the teachers that are in a different location can't see what's on the student's screen, and they can't walk around a room, you know, reading questions and answer choices for a group of 10 or 15 kids that are in one room when everybody's in a different location. So we're really trying to figure out how to make that work, and that's a difficult scenario that we're facing right now. So I don't really have the answer, but somebody asked about it, and I do, you know, I just wanted to say that we're trying to figure that out right now.
Mm-hmm. Amy or Scott, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'll add, we've done a couple of assessments, the related service providers mostly, and what we ended up doing was just kind of putting together a letter that said that this is not a standardized assessment. It can't be because we're doing it remotely, and that we would do the pieces and parts that we could do remotely, and the rest would be kind of observation and parent interview, and just, you know, getting a little bit of background on the students. So the assessments, you know, we're probably at 50%, you know, accurate, not accurate, but it wasn't a standardized assessment, and most of the parents were okay with that. Going into the fall, we're actually requesting most of our parents to think about just doing a record review this year and not do their annual, you know, their triannual assessments, because to be able to do the triannual assessments virtually, it's just not going to be, it's not going to be worth it.
And to clarify, because I think we were kind of talking about different kind of assessments, so to clarify, the kind of assessments I was referring to were the district standardized reading assessments. That's what's happening right now, district standardized reading and math assessments. And a lot of our students with IEPs have accommodations of oral presentation. You know, the extra time can be built into the program, but the oral presentation, the wait time, like there's a lot of different things that, you know, that we're not really sure how it's going to happen just yet, but we're going to figure it out.
Right. I don't know if we have been given information yet on whether or not the New York State assessments are really going to happen, mainly for that reason, for test security and building in the accommodations into the assessments.
So, and these are like progress monitoring district standardized assessments that take place typically 3 times a year. So beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. So as of right now, we are, like I said, half of our students are on campus and half are not. So we are moving forward with this assessment at this time.
Okay, super helpful. Thank you. Good information. So that seems to be all of the questions that we've had coming in. Thank you, guys. Thanks very much for participating, and thank you all for joining us today. And we really do wish everyone all the very best for the school year. And any one of you who are having any challenges at all with Bookshare, please feel free to email us at support@bookshare.org, support@bookshare.org. You can email any question there and we'll make sure and get that for you, get that answered for you. We also definitely want to remind you about the great resources on the Bookshare website, in the Help Center, and then in the Learning Center. There are guides and videos on pretty much every aspect of using Bookshare. So please check those out. And please let us know how we can help. And thanks so much, Amy, Melanie, and Scott, for your insights. And I hope everybody has a really successful school year. Thank you so much.